I'm Valentina Rossi, 24 years old, raised in the opulent embrace of our family's villa in the heart of Tuscany, where golden sunlight spills over endless rows of vineyards. Our family owns Rossi Vino, Italy's grandest wine empire, valued at tens of millions of euros, its name synonymous with elegance and prestige. But beneath the polished surface of crystal chandeliers and rolling estates, my world was shadowed by the cold indifference of my parents, Isabella and Giovanni Rossi, and the smug entitlement of my older sister, Bianca, who at 27 was always the pampered princess. My grandfather, Antonio, was the one true light in my life. More than a mentor, he was the father I never had, teaching me the art of winemaking and the principles of ethical business with a warmth my parents never offered. When he passed away, his will shocked the family. He left me full control of Rossi Vino and the sprawling family villa. My parents, enraged at receiving only minor shares, and Bianca, denied the empire she assumed was hers, conspired to steal my inheritance. They forged documents, claimed grandfather was senile, and in a moment that still burns in my memory, my father dragged me by my hair across the villa's marble floors, hurling me into a torrential rain with nothing but my shattered pride. But I wasn't broken. I had a plan, and deep within grandfather's antique pocket watch, I uncovered a secret that would turn the tide. A hidden USB drive and a letter guiding me to a mysterious ally, a retired spy who held the key to my fight. Growing up, the favoritism in our villa was as blatant as the Tuscan sun. Bianca's 16th birthday was celebrated with a gleaming Ferrari, while mine passed with a dusty bottle of wine and a half-hearted toast. When Bianca flunked her business school exams, my parents hired elite tutors. My perfect grades earned me a distracted nod. Bianca would borrow my dresses, returning them torn, or spread rumors to alienate my friends, all while my mother dismissed my complaints with, "Bianca's more delicate, Valentina. Be understanding." My father was worse, brushing me off with, "Stop stirring drama." Only grandfather Antonio saw me. In the villa's eastern wing, he'd share stories of building Rossi Vino from a single vineyard, his eyes twinkling with pride. On weekends, we'd sail on his yacht La Stella, where he taught me to read the wind and navigate life's storms. "Sometimes you must tack against the wind to reach your destination," he'd say, his weathered hands steady on the wheel. He showed me how to select the finest grapes, craft award-winning vintages, and manage global distribution. "You have the mind to lead Rossi Vino," he told me, his voice brimming with conviction. "You'll make it greater than I ever could." When grandfather was diagnosed with terminal cancer, my world crumbled. I spent his final 8 months by his side, tending to his needs, reading his favorite novels aloud as his strength faded. Bianca visited rarely, her eyes glued to her phone, while my parents prioritized gala dinners over their dying father. One night, his frail hand gripped mine. "Valentina," he whispered, "not everyone values integrity as you do. I've made arrangements to protect you. If things go wrong, look for my message." The night before he died, his voice barely audible, he said, "Check the watch. I'll always shield you." Those words became my lifeline when my family's betrayal unfolded, and the secret hidden in his pocket watch, a USB with irrefutable evidence and a letter pointing me to Marco Russo, a retired spy and grandfather's trusted confidant, set me on a path to reclaim what was rightfully mine. If you're still listening, we want to sincerely thank you for spending your time with us. Truly means a lot. We'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments and let's see how far this message has reached. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I highly recommend doing it now so you won't miss any of our upcoming stories. These aren't just ordinary stories, they're filled with meaningful life lessons that can inspire, teach, and stay with you long after the video ends. Hit that subscribe button and join our growing community. The favoritism in our family was as constant as the Tuscan breeze rustling through the vineyards. Stung from my earliest memories. When Bianca turned 16, my parents gifted her a sleek, cherry-red Ferrari, its engine purring as she paraded it around our villa's cobblestone drive. My 16th birthday? a dusty bottle of Rossi Vino's 1998 vintage, and a curt "Happy Birthday, Valentina" from my mother Isabella as she scrolled through her phone. When Bianca flunked her entrance exams for Milan's prestigious Bocconi University, my parents hired a team of elite tutors, sparing no expense. I, on the other hand, brought home perfect grades from my boarding school, only to receive a distracted nod from my father Giovanni, who barely looked up from his newspaper. "Good effort," he'd mutter, as if my achievements were a footnote. Bianca reveled in her status as the golden child. She'd borrow my silk dresses, returning them stained with red wine or torn at the seams. She spread rumors among my friends, convincing them I was aloof or uninterested, ensuring I was left out of gatherings. When I confronted her, she'd smirk, tossing her hair. "You're too sensitive, Valentina," she'd say, echoing our mother's refrain. "Bianca's more delicate," Isabella would sigh whenever I protested, her diamond earrings glinting as she waved me off. "Don't cause drama," my father would add, his tone sharp, shutting down any further discussion. The only person who truly saw me was my grandfather, Antonio. He lived in the villa's eastern wing, a sanctuary of oak-paneled walls and leather-bound books, where he'd recount how he built Rossi Vino from a single vineyard in Chianti into Italy's most celebrated wine empire. His stories weren't just about grapes or profit. They were lessons in resilience, integrity, and vision. Every weekend, he'd take me out on his yacht, La Stella, named for my late grandmother. As we sailed the Tyrrhenian Sea, the salt air whipping through my hair, he taught me to read the wind, navigate by the stars, and steer through storms. "Life is like sailing, Valentina," he'd say, his calloused hands steady on the wheel. "Sometimes you must tack against the wind to reach your destination. The direct path isn't always the right one." On those azure waters, he also shared the secrets of winemaking, selecting the ripest Sangiovese grapes, balancing tannins, crafting vintages that won global acclaim. He walked me through Rossi Vino's international distribution networks, explaining market strategies with a glint of pride. "You have the mind to lead this company," he told me when I was just 15, his voice warm with conviction. "One day, you'll make Rossi Vino shine brighter than I ever could." When grandfather was diagnosed with terminal pancreatic cancer, my heart shattered. The doctors gave him 6 months. He fought for 8, his will as unyielding as the oak barrels in our cellars. During those months, I rarely left his side. I coordinated his care, read him Dante and Machiavelli when his eyes grew too weak, and listened as he reminisced about his early days. Bianca's visits were fleeting, 15 minutes at most, her eyes glued to her phone, scrolling through social media. My parents were even worse, always too busy with charity galas or business deals in Rome. They'd discuss grandfather's condition in front of him as if he were already gone, ignoring his wishes. One night, as a storm raged outside, he grasped my hand, his voice a fragile whisper. "Valentina, not everyone values integrity as you do. I've made arrangements to protect you no matter what happens. If things go wrong, look for my message." The night before he slipped away, he pulled me close, his breath faint. "Check the watch," he murmured. "I'll always protect you." His eyes, still sharp despite his frail body, held mine with fierce determination. I didn't understand then, but those words would soon become my anchor. Grandfather's funeral was a spectacle, more about my parents flaunting their social connections than honoring the man who built their world. Bianca sobbed dramatically for the cameras, her mascara artfully smudged, though I knew she hadn't shed a single tear in private. I sat quietly, my grief too raw for public display, clutching memories of our sailing trips and late-night talks about the future of Rossi Vino. A week later, the family gathered in the villa's mahogany-paneled library for the reading of the will. Matteo Bianchi, our family lawyer, a man whose loyalty always seemed to lean toward my parents, delivered the bombshell. Grandfather had left me 70% of Rossi Vino's shares, valued at over 30 million euros, and full ownership of the Tuscan villa. Bianca received a modest trust fund, enough for a comfortable life but not the empire she craved. My parents were given only a few personal items, grandfather's vintage wine collection and some artwork. The room froze. My mother's manicured nails dug into the armrest of her chair, her lips a thin line. My father's face flushed a deep crimson, his fists clenching. Bianca burst into tears, not of sorrow but of bitter entitlement, her wails echoing off the high ceilings. "This can't be right," my mother hissed, her voice venomous. Matteo shifted uncomfortably but insisted. Signor Antonio's wishes were explicit. In that moment, I felt the weight of their rage, but also a flicker of pride. Grandfather had chosen me not out of favoritism, but because he believed in my ability to carry his legacy forward. Yet, as my parents exchanged a glance with Matteo, a subtle nod passing between them, a chill settled in my bones. I didn't know it then, but that moment marked the beginning of their betrayal. The villa, once a place of warmth under grandfather's care, became a battlefield. Conversations hushed when I entered rooms. Doors that were always open were now locked. My parents, never warm, turned icy, dismissing my concerns with practiced smiles. Bianca, meanwhile, transformed into the perfect daughter overnight, serving my parents espresso with a saccharine smile while taunting me in private. "Enjoy your moment, Valentina," she sneered one evening in the hallway, her eyes gleaming with malice. "It won't last." I sensed the storm brewing, but nothing could have prepared me for the violence and deception that would soon strip me of everything, until I found the secret grandfather had hidden and the mysterious ally who would help me fight back. The air in the villa turned stifling, heavy with unspoken tension, like the oppressive heat before a Tuscan storm. Conversations would halt abruptly when I entered a room, my family's voices fading into forced smiles or awkward silence. Doors that had always stood open, leading to the library, the wine cellar, grandfather's study, were now locked tight, their brass keys missing. My parents, Isabella and Giovanni, once merely distant, became as cold as the marble floors beneath our feet. Bianca, my sister, underwent a chilling transformation. Overnight, she became the perfect daughter, serving my parents their morning espresso with a demure smile, assisting with mother's charity galas, her laughter echoing through the villa's corridors. But when we were alone, her mask slipped. "Don't get too comfortable owning everything, Valentina," she sneered one evening, cornering me in the dimly lit hallway outside my bedroom, her eyes glinting with malice. "This won't last." Her words carried a venom that made my skin prickle. I began to notice signs of something sinister. One morning, I slipped into grandfather's study, hoping to review Rossi Vino's financial records, only to find the mahogany desk stripped bare. Files I knew he'd kept, contracts, shareholder agreements, his handwritten notes on vineyard expansions were gone. When I confronted my father, he waved me off with a practiced lie. "Just organizing for probate," he said smoothly, adjusting his cufflinks. "Matteo needs the documents." But his eyes avoided mine, and I knew he was hiding something. The villa, once my sanctuary, felt like a chessboard where I was a pawn in a game I didn't yet understand. My family was plotting, and I was the target. Desperate for answers, I reached out to Sofia Moretti, grandfather's longtime assistant, who had retired just before his illness. We met at a small, crowded cafe in Florence, tucked away in a narrow alley where the scent of espresso mingled with the hum of city life. Sofia looked nervous, her eyes darting to the door every few seconds. Over untouched cappuccinos, she leaned in, her voice low. "Your grandfather feared this might happen," she whispered. "He knew they might contest the will. He prepared meticulously, Valentina, but I can't say more. Just be careful, your parents' influence runs deeper than you know." Before I could press her, she slid a few euros onto the table and hurried out, leaving me with a gnawing sense of dread. Days later, Matteo Bianchi, our family lawyer, summoned me to his sleek office in central Florence, its walls lined with law degrees and photos of him shaking hands with powerful clients. His tone was patronizing as he suggested I be reasonable about the will. "Your grandfather's wishes could be misinterpreted," he said, leaning back in his leather chair. Medical experts might question his mental clarity in his final months. A compromise could benefit everyone. The implication was clear. They were building a case to declare grandfather incompetent. I refused, my voice steady despite the chill creeping down my spine. His wishes were crystal clear, I said, holding his gaze. Teo's smile was thin, almost predatory. Wills can be complex, Signorina Rossi. We'll see. I knew I needed help. I contacted Luca Ferrari, a sharp estate litigation lawyer recommended by a university friend, unconnected to my family's web of influence. Over coffee in his modest office, Luca revealed troubling news. They filed preliminary documents questioning Antonio's mental capacity, he said, his brow furrowed. There's also a rumor of a revised will, one that supposedly overrides the one read in the library. My stomach churned. I began copying every document I could access, discreetly recording conversations when legally permissible and stashing them in a secure cloud drive. I prepared for the worst, but nothing could have braced me for the betrayal that came next. 3 weeks after the will reading, on a rain-soaked morning, our butler, Pietro, summoned me to the dining room with an uncharacteristic stiffness. As I entered, the air felt thick with menace. My parents sat at the head of the long oak table, Bianca at their side, her expression unreadable. Matteo was there, clutching a leather folder, and a stranger, introduced as Dr. Lorenzo Conti, a medical consultant, stood stiffly nearby. Matteo slid a folder across the table, his voice calm but cold. "We've uncovered evidence about your grandfather's will," he began. Inside were forged documents, a medical report claiming Antonio suffered cognitive decline in his final month, and a letter, supposedly in his handwriting, expressing concerns that I had manipulated him into changing his will. "That's not his handwriting," I protested, my voice shaking with fury. "Anyone who knew him would see through this." Mateo's response was smooth. "Experts have verified it." My mother cut in, her tone dripping with false sympathy. "Valentina, the facts are clear. Your grandfather wasn't himself." My father added, "The courts have granted a temporary stay on asset transfers. You need to leave the villa. Today." I clutched my bag of personal belongings, refusing to hand it over. "These are my things," I snapped. My mother's face contorted. "You ungrateful viper," she shrieked. Before I could react, my father lunged, seizing a fistful of my hair. Pain seared through my scalp as he dragged me through the hallway, my feet scrambling against the polished marble. Bianca watched, her eyes wide but silent as I screamed. Down the grand staircase we went, my body thudding against each step, the chandelier above blurring through my tears. My mother flung open the front door, and with a final shove, my father threw me onto the wet cobblestone drive. My suitcase followed, bursting open, my clothes and books scattering in the rain. "You're no longer welcome here," my father declared, straightening his tie as if he hadn't just assaulted his daughter. "Any return will be trespassing." The massive oak door slammed shut, leaving me alone, soaked and trembling as security guards appeared at the gate, their faces impassive. Through the haze of pain and rage, I gathered my scattered belongings, my hands shaking as I stuffed them into the broken suitcase. Grandfather's words echoed in my mind. "Check the watch. I'll always protect you." I didn't know what he meant, but as I stood in the downpour, I clung to the hope that he had foreseen this betrayal. With nowhere to go, I called my friend Claudia, the only person I trusted. "They threw me out," I choked out. "I need help." As I waited for her, huddled under a cypress tree, I realized this was only the beginning. Grandfather's secret, hidden in his pocket watch, and the mysterious ally, a retired spy named Marco Russo, would be my weapons to reclaim what was mine. Pain in my scalp lingered, a throbbing reminder of my father's grip as he dragged me across the villa's marble floors. Humiliation burned hotter than the bruises forming on my arms. Soaked and shivering in the rain, I dialed Claudia, my closest friend, my voice trembling as I choked out, "They threw me out. I have nowhere to go." She arrived within the hour, her Fiat screeching to a halt outside the villa's gates. Her face paled when she saw me, hair matted, clothes drenched, a suitcase spilling my life onto the cobblestones. "Valentina, my God," she gasped, helping me gather my things. In her cramped Rome apartment, she gave me dry clothes and a mug of chamomile tea, but nothing could soothe the ache of betrayal. I reported the assault to the police the next morning, my hands shaking as I recounted how my father had yanked me down the stairs. The officer, a bored man with a coffee-stained shirt, typed slowly, his skepticism palpable. "So, Giovanni Rossi of Rossi Vino did this?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "Sounds like a family dispute. These things are usually civil, not criminal." Days later, the prosecutor declined to press charges, citing insufficient evidence and the complex nature of inheritance disputes. My heart sank. My family's influence had already begun to smother my fight. With only €2,000 in my personal account and my family credit cards canceled, I leaned on Claudia's kindness, sleeping on her worn couch. But my parents' reach was relentless. A week later, her landlord called, his voice tense. "Signorina Rossi can't stay. I've had pressure." My parents had tracked me down, threatening to buy the building and evict every tenant unless I left. Claudia was devastated, but I couldn't let her risk everything for me. I moved to a string of dingy motels on Rome's outskirts, the kind with flickering neon signs and stained carpets. To survive, I sold what little I had, my laptop, my jewelry, each sale a stab to my pride. When my bank balance dwindled to €200, I held grandfather's antique pocket watch, the last piece of him I had left. Its weight felt like an anchor, its gold surface etched with memories of our sailing trips on La Stella. I was about to pawn it when I noticed a faint seam on its back. My fingers, guided by instinct, pressed the edges in the pattern of grandfather's safe code. With a soft click, the panel sprang open, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a USB drive and a folded note in his elegant script. "My dearest Valentina, if you're reading this, the worst has happened. This drive holds everything you need, proof of my wishes, my sanity, and access to secret accounts. Contact Marco Russo, my friend of 40 years, a retired spy. He's expecting you. Stay strong." Tears blurred my vision as I clutched the note. Grandfather had foreseen this betrayal. That night, I called Marco Russo, who insisted on picking me up from the motel. A tall man with silver hair and piercing eyes, he arrived in a black Alfa Romeo, exuding quiet authority. As we drove to his secluded farmhouse outside Siena, he revealed that grandfather had confided in him years ago, suspecting my parents might try to undermine me. "Antonio was a strategist," Marco said, his voice low. "He trusted you to carry Rossi Vino forward." The USB contained a treasure trove, recordings of grandfather affirming his will, medical reports proving his mental clarity, and access to a hidden account with €1.5 million, untouchable by my parents. Marco, a former intelligence operative who once helped grandfather fend off rival wine conglomerates, introduced me to Enzo Bianchi, Antonio's retired business partner, who knew the company's secret safeguards. With Luca Ferrari, my lawyer, Marco, and Enzo, I built a case to reclaim my inheritance. I hired Carlo Mancini, a private investigator with a knack for uncovering secrets. Carlo discovered Bianca owed €400,000 in gambling debts to casinos in Monte Carlo, debts my parents paid off using Rossi Vino funds the day after my eviction, a clear violation of the estate freeze. He also found evidence that my parents had taken high-interest loans to prop up their failing investment firm, leveraging grandfather's anticipated assets. Most damningly, Matteo Bianchi, their lawyer, had forged documents after grandfather's death, including the letter claiming I manipulated him. Marco provided a hidden gem, a video recorded on La Stella, where grandfather not only confirmed his will but recounted how my father once tried to strong-arm him into transferring shares to Bianca by threatening to isolate him from his friends. "They underestimated you, Valentina," grandfather said on the tape, his voice steady. "Prove them wrong." Our investigation uncovered a bombshell that shook me to my core. Matteo Bianchi, our family lawyer, wasn't just a crooked attorney. He had ties to a Naples-based crime syndicate, helping my parents launder Rossi Vino funds to pay off their debts. Marco Russo, with his seasoned spy instincts, worked discreetly with Italy's anti-mafia police to track Matteo's dealings, uncovering encrypted emails linking him to illicit transactions. Armed with this, alongside the forged documents, Bianca's gambling debts, and my parents' desperate loans, we had enough to sue my family and Matteo for fraud, forgery, and asset misappropriation. The evidence was a fortress, and I was ready to storm the gates. Days before the trial, a letter arrived from Pietro, our family's butler of 20 years. His words trembled on the page, apologizing for his silence as my father dragged me from the villa. "I was a coward, Signorina Valentina," he wrote. "I overheard your parents plotting to steal your inheritance weeks before Antonio's death. I'll testify if it helps." His offer was a flicker of hope, a reminder that not everyone had abandoned me. Then came Bianca's frantic texts, begging to meet, claiming, "Papa's losing control, Valentina. I'm scared." I saw through her ploy, a trap to lure me out or soften me with fake tears. I ignored her, steeling myself for the courtroom. Trial unfolded in Florence's grand courthouse, presided over by Judge Sofia Conti, renowned for her unyielding fairness. My parents' team presented their forged medical reports and the fake letter, painting me as a scheming granddaughter who manipulated a dying man. Luca Ferrari, my lawyer, dismantled their lies with surgical precision. We played grandfather's video from La Stella, his voice resolute as he affirmed my inheritance and exposed my father's past coercion. Doctors testified to his mental clarity, Pietro recounted overheard schemes, and staff confirmed my parents' premeditation. When Marco revealed Matteo's mafia ties, gasps rippled through the courtroom. Judge Conti's eyes narrowed, and she ordered Matteo detained on the spot for investigation. Her ruling was swift and merciless. The original will was upheld, all assets were to be returned, and the case was referred to prosecutors for fraud and assault charges. Victory was mine, but it felt bittersweet. I gave my parents 2 weeks to vacate the villa, rejecting their desperate pleas for a settlement. Bianca kept her trust fund, as grandfather intended, but my parents got nothing beyond his minor bequests. I sold the villa, its memories too tainted, donating a portion to organizations fighting domestic violence. With the proceeds, I bought a modest home in Florence, a fresh start near Rossi Vino's headquarters. I restructured the company, prioritizing sustainable winemaking, and founded the Antonio Rossi Foundation to mentor young vintners, honoring grandfather's legacy. Bianca's letter came months later, raw with regret. She admitted her gambling addiction and the pressure from our parents. At a quiet Florence cafe, she spoke of threats from creditors and her therapy journey. I wasn't ready to forgive, but her sincerity cracked open the door to future reconciliation. Meanwhile, I met Lorenzo Moretti, a chemist revolutionizing eco-friendly winemaking. Our shared passion sparked a romance that began healing my scars, anchoring me in hope. As I rebuilt Rossi Vino, I realized grandfather's true gift wasn't the empire, it was the strength to rise from betrayal and forge my own path. A year after the courtroom victory, I stood at grandfather Antonio's grave in a quiet Tuscan cemetery, the autumn breeze carrying the scent of ripe grapes. I placed a bottle of Rossi Vino's first vintage under my leadership beside his simple granite headstone, engraved with integrity above all. "We did it, Nano," I whispered, my fingers tracing the stone. From a girl dragged from her home, hair torn, dreams shattered, I had risen to lead Rossi Vino, embodying the integrity, resilience, and passion he instilled in me. The empire wasn't his true legacy. It was the unshakable belief that I could weather any storm to become my truest self. This journey taught me 5 lessons I'll carry forever. First, family is defined by loyalty, not blood. Grandfather and friends like Claudia proved that. Second, adversity forges strength. My lowest moments shaped me into a leader. Third, justice requires patience and strategy, as Marco and Luca showed me. Fourth, healing is a separate journey from victory. Therapy with Lorenzo's support helped me mend. Finally, a legacy is built through purpose, not wealth. Rossi Vino now thrives sustainably, and the Antonio Rossi Foundation uplifts others. I'm no longer the girl in the rain, but a woman steering her own course, with Lorenzo by my side and a future I've crafted. If my story resonates, if you've ever fought for what's yours, share your lessons below. Like, share, and subscribe to hear more tales of triumph over betrayal. Together, let's inspire others to rise, just as grandfather taught me to sail against the wind.